Yep, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First, I will introduce myself. My name is Saktiansyah. I'm from class 2021 C. Today we will discuss about the Eagle poem. Before we discuss it, first, what is poem? Is it just a word of just anything? Poem is many meanings and kinds in every era. What is poem? A poem is a piece of writing that partakes of the nature of both speech and song, that is nearly always rhythmical, usually metaphorical, and often exhibits such formal elements as meter, rhyme, and stanza structure. Then I will broke you the poem Eagle by Alferd Lord Tennyson. He claps the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely lands. Ringed with the azure world he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt he falls. Maybe this is the shortest poem I ever read, because it's only have two stanza. We will discuss about small amount of the history of the poem, the eagle. The poem used many examples of figurative language, all with the purpose of creating majestic and commanding representation of an eagle. In this way, Tennyson show how man needs to connect to his human soul through the appreciation and admiration of nature. This poem was first published in 1851 by author Alferd Lord Tennyson. Tennyson was greatly affected by writers of the Romantic period in 1798 until 1837, and crafted works that could fit within the genre. This era of art emerges as a response to national conflicts, most notably the American Revolutionary War in 1775 until 1783, and the French Revolutionary War in 1792 until 1802. The philosophy of the era was to reimagine the human experience with a childlike and innocent attitude towards the world. In it featured the new role of individual thought and personal feelings, emphasizing the subjective experience over the objective world. This was often showcased in one individual relationship with nature, beauty, and the supernatural realm. This left room for the artist to prioritize the imagination over objective reality. Artists of the Romantic era in general put emphasis of imagination over reality. And then I will talk about the poem name Alferd Lord Tennyson, who created the eagle. Alferd Lord Tennyson was the most renowned poet of the Victorian era. His works includes In Memoriams, The Charge of the Light Brigade, and Idealist of the King. Who was the Alferd Tennyson is? He born in England in 1809. Alferd Lord Tennyson began writing poetry as a boy. He was first published in 1827, but it was not until 1840s that his works received regular public acclaim. His In Memoriam in 1850, which contains the line, "'Tis better have loved and lost than never to have loved at all," cemented his reputation. Tennyson was Queen Victoria's poet laureate from 1850 until his death in 1892. Summary: The Eagle. The Eagle poem rhythm is A-A-A-B-B-B. Structure: The Eagle by Alferd Tennyson is a two-stanza poem that is separated out into two sets of 3 lines, known as terces. These tercets follow a very simple rhyme scheme that conforms to a pattern of AAA-BBB. The poem also makes use of the metrical pattern of iambic tetrameter. This means that each line contains 4 sets of 2 beats, known as metrical feet or iamb. The first is unstressed, and the second stress, it sounds something like dadum dadum. Alright, we'll analyze the eagle by stanza per stanza. In stanza 1, he claps the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely lands, ringed it with the azure world he stands. This piece begins with a description of a creature, only labeled with the pronoun he. The speaker is assuming that a reader will understand who this he and is. And if one reads the title of the poem, it's clear Tennyson's speakers is describing an eagle, who is at the moment the poem starts on a crag, meaning a rugged of exposed cliff face. This is somewhere human being could not or would have trouble reaching there. There is something transcendent about this opening scene. It is beyond that which humanity can experience, except through the word of writers such as Tennyson. Alferd Tennyson also makes use of alliteration in this first line in order to increase the rhythm of the phrase. Additionally, through personification, Tennyson imbues the eagle with human-like feature. He refers to claws as hand, and the wool eagle as he rather than it. The simplicity of the rhyme in this line carries the poem forward. It is contrasted by the dramatic image Tennyson has created. This only expands as he discusses the lonely lands that stretched out underneath the crag. This implies the feeling of loneliness and isolation, as well as the fact that no human being can touch the place. Tennyson expands the landscape further as he describes the ring of blue sky that wraps around the world. The eagle stands as if lording over the lands below him. He represents a clear image of power and knowledge, as well as the traditional meanings associated with eagles, freedom and bravery. In stanza 2, the wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt he falls. In the second stanza, the speaker gives the reader a few more details about the eagle's surrounding. The rocky cliff on which the creature is perched is, as already made clear, very steep. Tennyson adds that it is also jutting out over the sea. The eagle is so high up, the sea appears to be covered in wrinkles. They represent the various shapes of waves and might make one consider how age and time play into this description. In the next line, the eagle's position of power on the rocks is reimposed. He is high above everything else and is able to watch what is going on below and around him. A reader should also take note of how Tennyson called the mountain was. The eagle was as if they belonged to him. He has a claim over this piece of land, and because he is the only creature capable of reaching it, there is no one to challenge him. The transition from the second line to the third is powerful. All of a sudden the eagle drops from his perch, plunging towards the sea below. This intentional dive was pre-planned on the eagle's part. Certainly, but for the reader, it is come as something of a shock. He is hunting a smaller creature below him, and knew when to the precise moment would be for him to dive for it. In the final line, Tennyson described eagle as a thunderbolt. Again, this speaks to his godlike power in the world and might even inspire a direct comparison to the god of Zeus. And then we'll discuss the eagle poem techniques. Tennyson employs several noteworthy techniques in the composition of this poem: alliteration, personification, hyperbole, imaginary, metaphor, and simile. But before we discuss it, I will explain you about alliteration, personification, hyperbole, imaginary, metaphor, and simile. First, we have alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of the same sound at the start of a series of words in succession whose purpose is to provide an audible pause that gives a piece of writing of lulling, lyrical, and emotive effect. Then we have personification, a poetic device in where animals, plants, or even inanimate objects are given human qualities, resulting in a poem full of imaginary description. Then, hyperbole, a figure of speech that is an intentional exaggeration for implies comic effect. Imaginary, elements of a poem that invoke any of the five senses to create a set of mental images. Metaphor, a metaphor is a direct comparison without using the comparative words like or as. Metaphor equate the two things being compared to elicit a stronger connection and deepen the meaning of the comparison. If a metaphor continues for several lines or an entire piece of writing, it's called extended metaphor. Then the last we have simile. A simile is a comparison between two unlike things using the word like, as, or then, often used to highlight a characteristic of one of the items. Similes rely on the audience's ability to create connection and make inference about the two objects, people, action, or concept being discussed. Then we'll continue. In alliteration, we know that alliteration is the repetition of the same sound. Note the strong C consonants in the first line of the first stanza in the words collapse, crack, and crooked. The repetition of rhyme of the harsh consonant sonically implies the strength of the eagle portrayed in this line. Personification is like something represents something. The author chose to use human pronouns and feature when describing the eagle throughout the poem. He refers to the eagle as he rather than it. Similarly, he described the eagle grasping at the rock face with hands rather than claws. This effectively gives the eagle a more prominent status in the mind of the reader. Without this instance of personification, the reader would not be as affected by the praise he stands, because animals are capable of standing. This would not necessarily be personification. However, because it is preceded by the consistent personification of the eagle, it is pictured in a human-like dominant stance by this praise. Another non-human entity that is personified is the sea. The author describes it is wrinkled and writes beneath the eagle it crawls. The wild personification elevates the status of the eagle. It does the opposite of the sea. Wrinkled and crawling suggests a pitiful creature. What is interesting here is that the effect is not so much that we think of the sea as pitiful, but rather pitiful by comparison to the eagle. This even further elevates the strength and nobility of the creature. In hyperbole, we note hyperbole a figure of speech that is an intentional exaggeration of implies or comic effect. In the final line of the poem, the author ceases to personify the eagle. He writes, and like a thunderbolt he falls. In this way, the eagle transcends even his dominant kingly status to that of a force of nature. In this way, it is understood that the eagle is not falling on accident or turning into a bolt of lightning. Rather, he is demonstrating his power. In imaginary element of a poem that invoke any of the five senses to create a set of mental image. There is hardly any word space allocated to anything other than imaginary. In this poem, in the first line of the first stanza, the word claps, crack, and crooked. Hence, center the reader around the eagle. The reader is thus situated close enough to the eagle to see him grip his claws around the hard rock of what will later be seen to be mountain walls. Crooked claws. Here also an example of personification giving the eagle hands instead of claws. Then, in the second line, sun and lonely land are seen. This image provides the reader with a sense of the eagle's movement. His path over a vast space of blue sky and sunlight. The position of the eagle close to the sun implies the kingly status the eagle has in environment. The sun shining down on the eagle with the bright blue sky in the background makes the eagle seems more powerful than everything else. A metaphor is a direct comparison using the comparative words like at, as. Metaphors equate the two things being compared to elicit a stronger connection and deepen the meaning of the comparison. If a metaphor continues for several lines or an entire piece of writing, it's called an extended metaphor. Here are some examples of metaphor from the eagle. You can see from the stanza 2, in line 2, he watches from his mountain walls. This meaning, he stands in high place, and the mountain walls meaning the mountain, the real mountain, I mean. And simile is a comparison between two unlike things using the word like, as, or then, often used to highlight a characteristic of one of the items. Similes rely on the audience's ability to create connection and make inference about the two objects, people, action, or concepts being discussed. Example of similes from the eagle poem are also from stanza 2, but in line 3. Line 3, it says like, and alike a thunderbolt he falls. In line 3, we can see that line use a simile because the line is using alike words to represent something, a highlight of a characteristic of the items. Alright, maybe that's it from me. Thank you very much, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye.